morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another special edition of Khmer Time Cross Talk. And out of the office today, well, a very special person, a very special guest to be on my show. And for the first time ever, we have a Nobel Peace Prize nominee on our show. May I introduce you to Dr. Maung Zarni. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for coming to our show.
This is the second time, really.
Yeah, this is the second time, but this is like the first time that you came here as a Nobel Peace Prize nominee for this year. Yeah, first thing first, congratulations for the nomination. But can you please tell us about this, as an advocate from Myanmar, as a human rights advocate, peace advocate. So how can you be nominated for this? How did it happen?
Well, the nominator, Murray Maguire, she's about 79 years old, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1976 for building a grassroots movement calling for peace for Northern Ireland. Yeah, because of the violence there, they call it the Troubles. There's so many people from both Catholic and Protestant communities have been killed. And so she herself lost her sister and also two or three other two children of her sister in an incident that involved the Irish Republican Army and the British paratroopers. Okay. So she met me in 2015. That's almost 9-10 years ago in Salt Lake City at the conference of the Parliament of the World's Religions. Parliament of the World's Religions. Yeah. And that's the oldest interfaith international organizations. And some of the members were like Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, and also she also is a practicing Christian. Okay. So I was recognized as a peace activist, pushing for religious harmony between Muslims and Buddhists and other communities in my own country of Myanmar. Yeah. And so since then, we have stayed in touch, and she followed my grassroots activism, primarily pushing for human rights for anywhere. So I have helped or supported, I should say, I've supported different human rights struggles, like whether it's Africa or Palestine or East Timor or Myanmar. And so she thought that she wanted to nominate me for the recognition. So she sent me an email and basically asked these are her words, may I nominate you for the Peace Prize? And I was very surprised. Yeah. And but because she couldn't nominate, without my consent. And so I said yes. That's how it came about. This was like in January of this year.
Yes. Speaking of the Nobel Peace Prize, it reminds me of one lady, Aung San Suu Kyi. Right. Unfortunately, he's still, according to the military government of Myanmar, she's still in house arrest. He also the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in the past. Again, I'm very sorry about what is happening in your country right now. So, as an activist, can you give us like an update on what's happening now in Myanmar?
Well, we have widespread armed resistance across the country against Myanmar military. As you know, Myanmar military has been in power since 1962, so that's 62 years, right? Yeah. And 10 years ago, we had Aung San Suu Kyi working together with Myanmar military to open up the country, to normalize Myanmar relations with ASEAN as well as the Western countries and international organizations, right? But since the military coup 3 years ago, the country's young people have risen up, taken up arms because they could not push for democratic transition peacefully. The military staged a coup. Right now, more than 50% of the country's territories have been falling into the hands of different ethnic armed organizations. Mm-hmm. So that is a good thing, right? Like a different ethnic groups, different organizations, different movements reclaiming administrative autonomy, control of their own regions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a good thing. That is something that many of us welcome. The Burmese public is very pleased that armed resistance organizations such as the Khmer National Union or Arakan Army or others have reclaimed autonomy. Mm-hmm. Because the country can only experience peace if we have a political system that treats every group fairly and equally, rather than one group, whether it's the military or the Burmese ethnic group, controlling everything, acting like they were colonial masters. Then of course that's a recipe for conflict and violence. That's what we have. But so generally it's been positive. The military is losing the morals of the troop. The military junta's troops are very, very low. A lot of desertions and the military losing hundreds of military bases across the country and towns, being taken over by the ethnic resistance organizations. But there is something that is also deeply, deeply troubling happening. That is in Western Myanmar state next to Bangladesh. As you know, in 2016 and 2017, Myanmar military, at the time working with Aung San Suu Kyi as the civilian government, they jointly attacked the Rohingya communities. Over 700,000 Rohingyas fled. The northernmost town of Rakhine State called Maung Zarni, that's pretty much destroyed, and then over 700,000 people fled across the border into Bangladesh. And they became refugees in Bangladesh, almost 1 million from previous exodus. So now that is happening again, but this time it's being, according to the eyewitness Rohingya accounts, this time in the last 5 days, burning of homes, thousands of homes, looting, and some killings. All of this time is done by Arakan Army. Arakan Army is one of the strongest ethnic resistance force. Yeah. They represent Buddhist Rakhines. So in Rakhine State, to understand the politics in Rakhine State, because this is the most important bit, there are 3 different groups. You've got like 2 residential populations, Rohingya, primarily Muslims, and then Rakhines, primarily Buddhist. They live together, and the Burmese military would exploit the religious and ethnic differences and tensions that they pit one group against one another since independence. That's like 70 plus years. And now the perpetrators are Arakan Army. That's according to eyewitnesses. So in the last 5 days, since the 18th of May, over 150,000 Rohingyas had to flee their town called Buti Town. That's the southernmost town of the Rohingyas. So they in the last 5 days, they have fled to areas where they had no food, whatever food they brought from home, that's all they had. They're cut off, internet's cut off there, so nobody knows. It's similar to, on a smaller scale, but similar to what Israel has been doing in Gaza, like moving the population at gunpoint to areas without providing any access to food or medicine or drinkable water. That is what's happening in the last 5 days in Rakhine State, and it's done by one of the anti-junta ethnic groups called Rakhine.
So, with the occurrence here, how do you say we can help them like immediately? How could like? I mean, I'm not sure whether the hunter will help them or any other will help them. Is there any way to help them? You can see.
But say it again.
Yeah, can you see any way to can help those?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is why what the junta and the Arakan army have tried to do was forced young Rohingya men from villages and towns to serve as their new recruit soldiers. So it would be like, both groups, the Burmese junta based in Naypyidaw and the Arakan army that is, having control of most of the Rakhine State, both of them coming into a single town and taking young men to fight for them. So it would be like, Rohingyas who were forced into Arakan army, and then the Rohingyas who were forced as new soldiers into the Myanmar army. They will be fighting against each other. You see, that's a scenario. One Rohingya community targeted by both the Myanmar junta and the Arakan army. So because the Arakan army is winning these ground battles, they are the ones who are doing all these things. But of course the Arakan army will say it's the Myanmar military that's killing, right? But actually the Rohingyas say this time it is the Arakan army that's doing. But also like the Arakan army leadership refused to recognize the Rohingya by their own name. They say, no, you're Bengali, you're Muslims. Muslim is not an identity, Khmer is an identity, Cham is identity. The Cambodian people have, Muslim Cambodian, Christian Cambodians, right? You've got Buddhist Cambodians, some don't believe in anything, but you're all Cambodians, right? Yeah. And over there, so the Arakan army leadership openly mock and mock the Rohingya because they call themselves Rohingya. So they say, you're not Rohingya, you're Bengali, you're Muslims, meaning that you don't belong here. This is a Buddhist country. So there is an element of aspect of genocide. The genocide involves, de-recognizing or destroying the identity of the group,
Okay. It sounds like the situation is still, it's still a complicated matter. It's still, I feel like peace and ceasefire seem to be very still far away. You see any way out? There is. Of course, like every problem always has a way out. It's just a matter of different groups having the will to fight or to make peace. Now, we've been fighting as a society since independence, 1948, right? And then Rakhine State particularly, the Rakhine State saw the very first military conflict, in the 1 year before the country's independence. Since 1947, Rakhines and Rohingyas, they attempted to fight the Burmese military or the central government, right? So it keeps going on. That's why I think the Cambodia is a good example. You went through genocide. You lost 2 million people in the Khmer Rouge period in 4 years, and the leadership of the current leadership of Cambodia, they finally managed to get international community take an interest, and after the genocide, and then you had the Paris conference agreement, the peace process, right? Yeah. And so the top leadership of the Khmer Rouge, they were captured, and then
they were put on trial later. So the younger rank and file, Khmer Rouge soldiers and troops, right? They were reintegrated into society. You know, it's been a painful process, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But no one is attacking each other here. Yeah, after genocide, after 20 years of civil war, that followed genocide. So I think like something like that needs to happen. Like, you know, like we have Asian powers like India or China, right? Particularly, and then we have ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. I think these external players, ASEAN, China, Bangladesh, and India, they should say Myanmar are unable to build peace themselves. Too much fighting. We have like almost 3 million internally displaced people from across the region.
Yeah.
So something like, you know, maybe like we can have a Phnom Penh process, Phnom Penh Peace Conference. You see what I mean? Bring everybody, but the problem is the junta needs to be put on under pressure by China. Say, look, everyone needs to join this process. So the junta, say like the prime minister or a former prime minister, the chairman Hunman here, he spoke with the Mayor Online, the head of the junta, requested a meeting with Aung San Suu Kyi, right? But the situation has changed now. So the Aung San Suu Kyi no longer had the authority to tell the entire society to make peace. That's why, like, you know, the peace process need to involve the leaderships of different armed organizations. Aung San Suu Kyi alone can no longer be the dialogue partner with the military. So I think like if the Cambodian leadership as well as China and others recognize that there has to be a comprehensive discussion about how to move forward, how to end violence and conflict, right? So the number one, the military junta needs to be told that the international, particularly Asian powers, including Japan or South Korea, are very concerned, and they want to facilitate the peace process. You know, like Cambodia is the best place. You went through genocide, you went through civil war, you've got the leadership that went through that process, right? But as far as I'm concerned, the United States, European Union, they can participate later, but they don't have the solution. Yeah, all they have is sanctions and punishment. That's not working, right? So we need to find a different approach that has to involve both China and India and ASEAN. Yeah, if that can be arranged, the military junta will submit to this kind of process. And no one wanted to see the Myanmar to split into different, you know, little entities like the Balkans, right? Yeah. So I think like the Prime Minister Hun Sen has the right ideas, but his ideas need to be expanded to include the new but very important players, that is ethnic resistance leaders, not just Aung San Suu Kyi.
That's the problem. I mean, when former Prime Minister Hun Sen he initiated the win-win policy back in the 90s, but Cambodia is still one of the most unitary country. You know, we speak the same language, mostly same religion, and the same ethnic, but it cannot be said the same about Myanmar. It's a very diverse country. Right. So, what do you think should be the key to deal with these differences? You know, like.
Well, no, I think you're right. You know, we are a very diverse country. You know, we have about 15 different as very well established armed ethnic organizations. We also have like 500 or 600 new fighting groups called People's Defense Forces, right? And they're primarily made up of young people who joined the armed resistance. And they are also trained by established ethnic resistance organizations like Korean National Union or Kachin Independence Organization, right? And so I think like diversity or like having like different players, yes, on the face of it, it looks daunting. Oh, there are so many groups, or hundreds. But I think if you have worked out just a few principles, right?
Yeah.
First, the number one, everybody stops shooting at everybody, right?
Yeah.
We stop. We're going to 3 months, you know, the junta troops stay where they are, the ethnic resistance groups stay where they are, the People's Defense Forces, nobody attacks nobody, right? 3 months, yeah. But the junta has to agree to talk to anybody, right? And once they said 3 months, complete ceasefire. 3 months. Not long, right? We're not talking about 3 years or third. Only 3 months, right? And then second, say this country has to be federal system, meaning that different groups share or discuss how to share the leadership, the power. Like the ethnic minority regions, they would say we want political autonomy. That is legitimate, that needs to be respected. And then the military will say, we don't want to be punished, yeah? And if we share power, then of course like you have to work out, if it is one country, one union, you cannot have 800 armed groups, not possible. That's not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And the university students who have taken up arms, men and women, they need to resume their studies. They need to learn to become a journalist or whatever they were studying before, right? And also like because we have almost 3 million people that have fled the war into jungles and little places, they need to be provided with food, medicine, yeah, access to the housing, right? Yeah. So like if these things can be agreed on, number one is war is not going to solve anything, right? And of course like China is also involved. China brings a few people, a few groups, say like Kokand group, Taing group, Rakhine group, groups that are important along the Chinese-Burmese borders or like a Chinese investment areas like natural gas and oil pipeline. I think like China is interested in establishing stability, but the stability and peace has to be for the whole country, not just like one region, because like we have hundreds of armed groups, and like major ones are about almost 24. So I think any approach to peace will have to be comprehensive, and they will have to be guided by principles of transparency, fairness, and equality. And then I don't think any group, armed group in the country, resistance, anti-junta group, is fighting to set up a new republic or country, right? So external boundaries will remain the same, but the internal autonomous regions will have to be established, right? Mm. And so I think it's not hopeless, even that's why like, even in a very protracted, situation like Palestine, there are ways to end violence and conflict and even genocide. You lost 1/3 of your people, in 4 years. Look, in Cambodia is that, peaceful now. The political situation is stable, and you are attracting foreign investment. Young people feel hopeful. You just came back from China, right? Yeah. And it's like you don't have to worry about like bullets and killings and mine explosion. But the young people in Burma, they're making drones. Yeah, they're making guns. They're training. They're shooting at each other. Yeah. So I think like there is a solution. It's just a matter of like coming up with the right approach. And I think I would say this like openly. I think the former Prime Minister Hunman here, he's got something that is valuable, right? But he that approach, win-win, yeah, that approach has to be, because it's not just two groups, right?
Yeah.
It has to include different dialogue partners, yeah? And then it cannot just be Main Aung Hlaing or Aung San Suu Kyi.
Yeah. So the UN, the United Nations, just appointed a special envoy, I think, to Myanmar. Do you think do you think that she going to have like any game-changing role into this? And whether UN, you mentioned Cambodia can be the middle one, the mediator is come to the finishing, ending the violence in Myanmar. How about the UN? You can see any?
I don't have any hope that United Nations will have any positive impact on the situation. We have had a United Nations Special Envoy, right, appointed by Secretary General and his office, right, for facilitating the dialogue, in the last 20 plus years, maybe 30 years, I don't know, at least 25 years. And we've got Special Envoy, UN Special Envoy, at least like 5 or 6. None of them is able to facilitate any type of meaningful dialogue. If they had been able to accomplish anything, we would not be in this situation. We would be in a protracted negotiation. Instead, we are in a protracted war, civil war. That's why I don't pin any hope on United Nations. Not the General Assembly, not the Security Council. Look at how helpless and completely unable to help end the genocide or the violence in Gaza, you see?
Yeah.
And even the International Court of Justice, they have binding orders, both directed at the state of Myanmar in the case of Gambia versus Myanmar genocide case, and then South Africa versus Israel, right? And the ICJ, that's the highest court in the world, the International Court of Justice, right? That's the main organ, judicial organ of the UN. Neither the court, nor the General Assembly, nor the Security Council is able to do anything, to bring peace to either Palestinian people or Myanmar people. Right? Therefore, I don't look to the United Nations. I look to the successful cases of peacemaking within Asia. And Cambodia is the best example.
Yeah.
And also United Nations doesn't have the actual power. The power lies with the member states. And in our case, member states that are really important to us are China, India, and then your member states within ASEAN. And Thailand and Cambodia are very active, and Indonesia was active when it was chairing it, but Indonesia is now doing other things. And so I think, Malaysia, so several key member states of the ASEAN, China, India, and Bangladesh, we say, look, we will meet first, and this situation cannot be allowed to go on because people have been suffering for so long. And so I think that the solution for Myanmar lies with the ASEAN states and their intervention. But they need to work together, say okay, all right, we have our own strategic and economic and commercial interest in Myanmar. China has its own interest, India has its own interest. But for once, the ASEAN leaders should say peaceful and a federalized Myanmar will be good for the Myanmar people and good for the Asian businesses.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if they adopt that long-term, not short-term, long-term peace vision, say this is what we've got, right? And we will facilitate the dialogue. And look, Myanmar generals, they have nowhere else to go. They have families, they have grandchildren, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying that there should not be accountability, there should not be justice, but we cannot punish the entire Burmese armed forces of 100,000, 200,000 soldiers and their families and generations. They have nowhere else to go. We were under the Japanese, you were under the Japanese, during the war, you were under the French, we were under the British colonial administrations. They had their own countries to go home. When we say, no, go home, we don't want you, right? But we are talking about the same people. They have to live. We have to guarantee if you stop shooting, we will not let other ethnic groups to come and kill you. So I think like more like a reconciliation.
Yeah,
that's the one.
It sounds somewhat like the Cambodian win-win policy. Yeah. Again, I agree with you. If ASEAN and Cambodia can get this done, it will be the most. It's just like the most remarkable success by ASEAN and by the region. And our question here, but I want you to look at our camera and say what you want. Say what you want for 1 minute. Yes, look at our camera and see what's.
Well, I want to say, particularly to the Cambodian people, because you have endured genocide, lost 1/3 of your people, grandmother, grandfathers, your relatives, aunties, and everybody, so many people, 2 million, right? I think that as a Myanmar who has been coming to Cambodia in the last 10, 12 years, your example, post-conflict nation building is very inspiring. And I also want to say that the Prime Minister, Chairman Hun Sen, former Prime Minister, and I think he is sincere, he wants to help, but that he also needs to listen to ethnic resistance organizations and their leaders. And I think he's on the right, he has the right approach, but the scope of his approach needs to be expanded, and also like we have Mon people, you're related to Khmer people. I'm part of Mon, part Burmese. We're all mixed. So I think we don't look to Western governments or Western democracies for example. We look to countries like Cambodia, post-genocide. And it is becoming a success story. We would really like the Cambodian people, Cambodian leadership, as well as other ASEAN countries to consider supporting the peace process, because there is no total victory. There is no zero-sum solution. We cannot allow this to keep going. I think if a comprehensive peace process can be started, that involves not just Aung San Suu Kyi and the military, but all the ethnic leadership. We don't have to go to Paris to make peace, for good. We can come to Phnom Penh. We could start a Phnom Penh process, but with the support of ASEAN, with the support of China, with the support of India.
Yeah. That's it. Again, thank you for joining us today, and we wish you all the best, you and your country and your people, and of course the upcoming result of the Nobel Peace Prize laureate winner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you very
so
much.
that's it, folks. That's it for our interview this week. So I'm going to see you next week. For now, it log off. Sign off. Goodbye.